Lang nerds, welcome to LangExplained. This video is a part of our core curriculum series where we break down some of the key concepts and pieces of metalanguage from units 1 to 4 English language. So get excited for today's episode where we're going to be learning some metalanguage and recapping some of our key sociolinguistic concepts. Today, we're unpacking the word classes from the subsystem of Lexicology. Now, there are a lot of word classes to remember. So when you're trying to think of the specific word classes, remember see, vapid, pan, scam. And our word classes, of course, are conjunctions, verbs, auxiliary verbs, prepositions, interjections, determiners, pronouns, adjectives, nouns, subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, adverbs, and modal verbs. Now, there are lots of mnemonic devices out there to help you remember the different word classes. We here at LangExplained like see, vapid, pan, scam because it uses all of the word classes listed in the VCAS study design for English language. And it helps jog your memory that there are, of course, two different types of conjunctions, that there are nouns and pronouns, and that for our category of verbs, you need to know verbs, but also modal verbs and auxiliary verbs. Let's take a look now at what each of these word classes mean in a little bit more depth. So we start with verbs. These are our action or doing words. And our examples of verbs are verbs like write, eat, and edit. And one of the tests to determine if one test you can apply to determine if a lexeme is a verb is to imagine saying to someone, stand over there and insert verb here. If it's a verb, they will be able to do that and your sentence will make sense grammatically. So, stand over there and write. Stand over there and eat. Stand over there and edit. These are all verbs because they can all be done by a person. But stand over there and laptop, where laptop is a noun, isn't a grammatically correct sentence. Then we have auxiliary verbs. Now, auxiliary verbs are a type of verb that supports the main verb. And these verbs are required for our sentence to be grammatically correct, but they can also be used to express tense. So, auxiliary verbs include things like I am writing, where am is an auxiliary verb because our sentence can't be I writing in standard Australian English. I am writing is the present tense, but if we wanted to flip this sentence into the past tense, we would use the auxiliary verb was and say I was writing. And if we wanted to make this sentence future tense, we'd sub in our auxiliary verb will and say, I will be writing. And in fact, in I will be writing, we've added two auxiliary verbs into our verb phrase so that we've got that future tense of writing in a sentence that is grammatically correct. Auxiliary verbs include modal verbs, and it's important to remember that all modal verbs are auxiliary verbs, but not all auxiliaries are modals. And we'll talk a little bit more about modal verbs in a moment. Then we have prepositions. And prepositions express position in place or space. They help let us know where a noun is located. So we have examples of prepositions like inside, left, near, far, close. And these prepositions all tell us where a noun is located. So if you take a moment now and think about this preposition near, can you identify a noun, a person, place, or a thing that is near to you? Can you think about a noun that is far from you? And these prepositions let us know where that person, place, or thing is in relation to you right now. Then we have interjections. Now, interjections are used to express an often spontaneous emotion or opinion. So we have interjections like, oh my gosh, or yes, no, wow. And sometimes these interjections will also be exclamatives, but not always. Then we have determiners. And determiners help us identify which specific noun is being discussed. Remember, there's a big difference between someone asking you to get them a pencil and someone asking you to get them that pencil. So our determiners include words like this, that, a, an, my, and your. And you'll notice that these last two determiners on the list are possessive because my and your both tell us not only which noun is being discussed, but also who owns that specific noun. And if you're looking to add an extra sprinkle to your metalanguage, you might talk about my and your as possessive determiners. But it's really important that if you're going to do this, if you're going to add some extra sprinkles to your metalanguage, that you always remember to use determiner and then possessive as a sprinkle, because the specific word determiner is what is going to get you the mark. And calling it a possessive determiner is great. It's like a cake with sprinkles. But saying that my is possessive is like just giving someone sprinkles without a cake. Then we have conjunctions. Now, conjunctions connect different clauses within a sentence, and we can label these conjunctions as subordinating or coordinating. And we're going to talk more about the difference between subordinating and coordinating conjunctions in a moment. But in general, our conjunctions include words like and, for, yet, so, however, whereas, while. And if you're a keen green bean, can you identify which conjunctions in this list are coordinating and which are subordinating? Then we have adjectives. Now, adjectives describe a noun. So we can have adjectives like bright, small, hollow. And the test to see if a lexeme is an adjective is to see if we can use it in a sentence about a cat. So the small cat works perfectly because it's an adjective. The gigantic cat works perfectly because it's an adjective. But the table cat doesn't quite work. That's not a standard Australian English sentence because table is a noun, not an adjective. Now, our next word class is one that we've already talked a little bit about, and that is, of course, nouns. Nouns refer to lexemes that are the way we refer to a person, place, or a thing. And if we're looking for some extra metalanguage sprinkles, we can label nouns as concrete or abstract, where a concrete noun is something that you could see. It's tangible, so you could tap on it if you needed to. And abstract nouns are those concepts that we can't see, but we know that they exist. So a concrete noun is something like a table. You can see a table, and if you wanted to, you could walk up and tap on a table. But happiness, an abstract noun, isn't something that we can see, but it's something that we know exists. And we might be able to see the consequences of someone feeling happy. They might smile, they might have a little bit of a twinkle in their eye, but we can't see happiness because it's an abstract noun. We also could label as our sprinkle of metalanguage nouns as singular or plural. So cat is a singular noun, there's just one cat. Cats is a plural noun because there's more than one. But just like earlier, it's really important if we're going to add sprinkles to our metalanguage that we always remember that calling the lexeme a noun is what is going to get you the mark in VCE English Language. And adding that extra metalanguage sprinkle of concrete, abstract, singular, or plural is really nice, but it's got to be linked to a specific piece of VCA metalanguage. Next up, we have pronouns. And these take the place of a noun and are used to refer to a specific noun within a discourse. So our pronouns are things like she, it, they, ze, and he. And whenever we're thinking about pronouns and looking to analyse them in a discourse, this can be a really great place to double our VCA metalanguage and talk about substitution. Now you might remember, if you're a keen green bean, that substitution is also an element of cohesion. And so when we use pronouns to take the place of a noun within a text, we substitute that noun for the pronoun. It's one of those features that can help create links between different parts of the text to build that overall cohesion within it. Now, we've finally reached the part of this video where we're going to talk about conjunctions. So we have two types of conjunctions, subordinating and coordinating. And we're going to start with subordinating conjunctions first. Subordinating conjunctions connect a dependent clause to another clause. And remember, a dependent clause is the clause within a sentence that can't stand on its own grammatically. So some subordinating conjunctions in English include lexemes like however, while, or whereas. Those conjunctions would connect potentially an independent and a dependent clause, or two dependent clauses together in a sentence that already has another independent clause. Now, these are different to coordinating conjunctions, which is our next word class, because coordinating conjunctions connect an independent clause to another clause. And we remember our list of coordinating conjunctions with the mnemonic fanboys. Because unlike subordinating conjunctions, where there are lots and lots of different subordinating conjunctions in this English language of ours, there are only 8 subordinating conjunctions in English, and they include for, and, not, and nor, but, or, yet, and so. So, to begin with a coordinating conjunction, one of my biggest tips for English language students is to learn this list of coordinating conjunctions, so that if you're ever looking at a text, you can first of all identify whether one of the conjunctions you're looking at is coordinating by remembering if it's a part of fanboys, and then link that discussion of the use of a coordinating conjunction to a discussion of sentence structure. Then we have adverbs. Now, adverbs describe a verb and they often end in ly. So we have adverbs like quickly, slowly, brightly, and we can use these in sentences to help modify our verb, to tell us more about how this specific verb is being done. Then, lucky last, we have modal verbs. Now, modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verb that express the likelihood or possibility of an event taking place. And if you're looking for an extra metalanguage sprinkle, you might talk about modals as either strong or weak. A strong modal indicates that something is very likely to happen, whereas a weaker modal verb indicates that it's much less likely that this verb is going to happen. Now, if you are currently a VCE student, you would hear lots of teachers use modal verbs every day. And you are already probably really good at recognizing and classifying these modal verbs as either strong or weak. Because remember, there's a really big difference between your teacher saying, you could do exercise 13 for homework tonight, and you must do exercise 13 for homework tonight. Because could is a weaker modal verb. And so it allows for other possibilities, including the possibility where you don't do question 13 for homework tonight. Whereas must is a much stronger modal verb. And here, when you hear a teacher say you must do question 13 for homework, there's a much stronger likelihood that you're going to get that task done. So let's see how comfortable and confident you're feeling about the different word classes by seeing if you can identify them in a text you probably haven't seen before. So, this text is an email sent by the Australian pin and jewellery brand Jubbliumph to their email subscribers. And in this email, Tasha, the CEO of Jubbliumph, reminds customers that their warehouse is moving, and as a result, there's going to be a sale. So, take a moment here to, number 1, have a read of the text, and number 2, see if you can identify an example of each of the different word classes in this text. Okay, how'd you go? So you can see here on this slide that I've color-coded each of the different word classes. You'll notice though, at the top of this list, conjunction is in white, and I haven't left any of the conjunctions white because there are, of course, 2 different types of conjunctions. And so you see that the subordinating conjunctions are kind of in this like burnt orangey color, and coordinating conjunctions have just been left white. But now it's time for you to have a quick look at this and reflect on how you went identifying the different word classes. Were you able to find examples of verbs like forgot, upgrading, ship, eyeing, grab, use? Were you able to find auxiliary verbs like been, be, is? Were you able to find prepositions like to and soon? Could you find the interjection, that yay, on line 2? Were you able to find the determiners like any, the, and a? Could you find the pronouns our, we, you? Could you find the adverbs just, part? What about the nouns like Friday, warehouse, checkout, cart? Could you find the subordinating conjunctions like plus, if, or the coordinating conjunctions like for? Could you find the adjectives like little, as well as bigger and better, which are also alliterative on line 1? And could you find those sneaky modal verbs that often in this text form part of a contraction? So we've got you'll on line 9. That is a contraction that contains you, the pronoun, but also that LL is reflective of the modal verb will. Now, hopefully, you've been able to identify lots of examples of each word class here. But the one thing I want to draw your attention to now are these pesky contractions. And so when we're analysing and trying to identify the word class within a text, and sometimes students can get tricked by contractions when they're analysing word class and say things like, use of the pronoun where on line 1 acts as substitution, where the pronoun where is used to refer to the double-umph team. But that's not quite correct, because while the we in where on line 1 is absolutely a pronoun that is used to refer to the double-umph team, and it's acting as substitution, where isn't a pronoun, it's a contraction. It's a contraction that includes the pronoun we and the auxiliary verb are. And so if you're going to talk about the where on line 1, it's really important that you talk about this first as a contraction and then talk about the two individual words that make up this contraction. So it's much more correct to say on line 1, use of the contraction where includes the pronoun we and the auxiliary verb are. Here, the pronoun we in the contraction where is used as substitution, where this pronoun refers to Tasha and the double-umph team. And when you're able to do that, when you break down that contraction first, your analysis is much more accurate and it's much more specific. Plus, you also get the added benefit of doubling your metalanguage, because now you're not just talking about a pronoun, you're also talking about the contraction, the pronoun that you originally identified, and the auxiliary verb, that second word class of the term that alongside we creates this contraction. So, take a moment, see if you can do that same level of analysis for one of the other contractions in this text. You might look at the you've on line 4, the you'll on line 9, or maybe you just want to do a little bit more practice of breaking down where, and you're ready to look at where on line 11. But that's all we have time for today. Remember to be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time for more Elang Explained.